Greetings, fellow armchair Imagineers. Tiki here.
And BlueDragonFive.
And oh my god, Dragon, holy ethnically ambiguous pillows. It's the Rocko's Modern Life Static Cling Spoilercast. Do I have the wording on that right? Ethnically ambiguous pillows?
I believe, I think.
Ethnically ambiguous pillows. Get your ethnically ambiguous pillows here. Alright. Oh, man. Okay, so Dragon, this has been a pretty good week for Nickelodeon, my friend. Not only is Rocko's Modern Life, not only is this special probably the most well-regarded of the 90s Nicktoons reboots that we've gotten, that probably includes the Jungle movie and stuff of that nature, Legend of the Hidden Temple, which many people forgot was even a thing. Dragon, did you ever watch the Legend of the Hidden Temple movie?
The movie, no.
It was fun. It had Kirk Fogg did a really good job. He was like surprisingly good. But suffice to say, this is probably the most popular of the '90s reboots so far. Like this is really well regarded from what I've been seeing people talking about this one. And Dragon, not only that, but just a little preview into movie memoirs. Dora and the Lost City of Gold, Dragon, maybe the biggest surprise hit of the year for me. I very much enjoyed that movie. Like, not even ironically, just legitimately. I thought it was a really fun time. So just suffice to say, this week is just a really, really successful week for Nickelodeon. I'm kind of proud of them. They've got something going on. And you know what? Cartoon Network's got Infinity Train as well. So both our boys are doing well in the game, Dragon.
Good to hear.
All right, so Dragon, I'll go first with the nostalgia side of things with Rocko's Modern Life. I definitely watched Rocko as a kid, but it's funny because I don't necessarily have like the nostalgia for it that I do for a lot of other Nicktoons. I mean, that includes stuff like Rugrats, uh, Angry Beavers. I have a ton of nostalgia for. That's a little later, but basically all the classic Cousteau stuff. I have a ton of nostalgia for. Hey Arnold, of course, we've talked about Hey Arnold on this channel until we're blue in the face. Rocko, I got to admit, is something that was just kind of there for me, and I wasn't really all that big of a fan of it. I got to admit, in terms of the original show, I'm still not that big of a fan of it. I just think it is surrealist humor. It's done pretty well. At the end of the day, though, I think Ren and Stimpy, the original run of Ren and Stimpy, did a lot more with the surrealist humor genre than Rocko did. And, Rocko was just, I don't, again, it's one that I definitely watched as a kid and I watched often. I mean, I remember that theme song is definitely ingrained in my mind. But the actual show itself just didn't really stick with me all that much. Suffice to say, this is a great. It's not really a movie; it's a special. But this is a great special, man. It really is. It very much captures the charm of the original. It definitely gets into more pathos than the original could ever do. We definitely have a lot of modern day topical stuff that we explore that I'm really looking forward to going into detail about in the spoiler cast because there's a lot there, especially with the Ed Bighead character. Dragon, I'm sure you're happy with what they did with Ed Bighead in this movie. uh, it really is a very good film. I will say I do think it is a little bit of a step above the Jungle movie because I think the Jungle movie, for all its strengths, was a little bit predictable when it came to the plot. And this is honestly, it's refreshingly unpredictable. I mean, it's very short, it's very to the point, but it's got a lot of stuff going for it, man. And it's surprisingly filled with pathos toward the third act, and I really enjoyed that element of it. Like I said, the actual surrealist quality of Rocko is something where it's like it's kind of hit or miss for me. Some gags work really well, like for example, the gag where Filbert and Heifer just kind of like swap it cell phone and just kind of like walk off. Oh, isn't technology great? That kind of stuff works. Other stuff, not so much. But like I said, I think the heart of this special is the actual emotion and pathos to it, and there's one really big surprise in this special that I suffice to say, it was definitely it could have gone very poorly, Dragon. It could have been very much a like an easy grab at political points, but it really turned into something that I thought was quite fundamental to developing the Big Head character in a really meaningful way in this movie. So I very much appreciated that element of it. So yeah, honestly, this is probably my favorite Rocko piece of media there's ever been, because like I said, I don't have that strong of an attachment to any one episode of the TV show individually. So I'm very happy with this.
All right.
Go ahead.
Well, on the other hand, I have a great fondness for Rocko's Modern Life. I love that show. I do. It's one of my favorite of the Nicktoons, if I'm being frank. I mean, of course, we owe SpongeBob to this show in a great regard. You know, the best of SpongeBob, the early years of SpongeBob, the Hillenburg kind of era of SpongeBob. That's all thanks to Rocko. Again, this show gave its start to so many people. I mean, think about this, Tiki. Tom Kenny and Carlos Alazraqui, you know, their first voiceover gigs ever were Rocko.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because Tom Kenny, he was a comedian. You know, he worked with Bobcat Goldthwait. You know, that's kind of the most he really. I'm saying he had some film work. I'm sure, like did Shakes the Clown and stuff. But I mean, like, I don't know if that predated. I don't know if that was. I forget if that was in the '90s or late '80s. The point being, probably '90s. Probably my point's probably moot, but let's just go with it anyway. The fact of the matter is, you have like all your mainstays, like your Doug Lawrences, your Planktons from SpongeBob, kind of these men who are really great storytellers as well as voice actors, all got their start on this show, and it's just kind of this. Again, it was kind of everything you love about, '90s Nick at its height. Where you had just kind of something really creatively appealing, as well as just something that's also kind of smart with with how it's going about its comedy. It's again, you used to have this really kind of zen-like, just kind of like it was really kind of a pleasant protagonist, just kind of dealing with the crazy modern world around him that for us was very much the '90s, and we take it into the taking about 20 years later into the world the world in the state that it's in now, and kind of a cartoony variety, and it's still an ingenious premise. I'm still head over heels for it, and I tell you, when I was very much looking forward to this. I remember there was they played a clip at I guess the Comic-Con last year. I forget if it was last year or the year before. I think it was last year. And I remember, honestly, the short was pretty much like the opening of this whole special. And I heard it was going to be a special or a movie. And I was wondering, oh my God, I mean, what if it was a short the whole time? Because I was already satisfied with just the short there. Okay, I mean, it kind of covers all the bases.
Right.
They come back. It's the modern age, and it's kind of the premise. And I was satisfied with that. It got even better. I was I absolutely was very satisfied with this. It was everything I could have asked for it. And again, this isn't necessarily like it's not the last missing piece of the puzzle. It kind of took maybe not a risk coming back, but they didn't need to come back, and they did. And I thought it didn't make me regret them coming back. So this was everything I could have hoped for in essence.
Okay, so Dragon, hit us with some quick background, and then we'll get right into the spoiler territory then.
So not a whole lot of background, as you know. Again, no one's really banging down the door for more Rocko. Just kind of in the sense of, hey, we like the '90s.
It definitely wasn't the same sort of anticipation that we got from the Jungle movie, or that we're going to get from Invader Zim.
Exactly. I mean, this is an example of, again, this is like a show that was kind of the tone of Nickelodeon. Like, it wasn't the first stringer like. It wasn't a first stringer like Rugrats, Ren and Stimpy, or Doug. It wasn't like a first stringer like that. I want to say Rocko was the fourth Nicktoon, if I'm remembering correctly. It was like right after that.
That definitely sounds about right, for sure.
I'm pretty sure about that, but I'm like 90% certain about that, regardless. The fact of the matter is, so the point is, like, Rocko is just kind of a staple of like what Nickelodeon was. Therefore, it's just kind of like we need, like, kind of like you'll see Rocko merchandise from here and there, like you'll see like the shirt being sold, and you hear a lot of quotes and stuff like "Here, Spunky," that sort of stuff.
Turn the page, wash your hand. Turn the page, wash your hand.
I'm nauseous.
I think I'm nauseous is probably the one that stuck with me.
That's what I'm saying. Again, it's just there's really
Basically, any Filbert quotes. Filbert was probably always my favorite.
and of course, the go-to would probably be like, "This is a very dangerous day." Like, laundry day
Sure,
can be a
sure,
very
sure.
dangerous day. And Rocko's, that whole "Here, Spunky," all that stuff. Point
Okay,
being,
I'm sorry. I gotta bring this up because that very dangerous thing reminded me of the incredibly difficult Super Nintendo game Dragon. This and The Lion King have in common the fact that they both had incredibly difficult Super Nintendo games. And the Super Nintendo game was called Rocko's Modern Life, Spunky's Dangerous Day. And the whole thing was that Spunky was like a, controlled by the computer, and you had to like get him out of dangerous situations. It was kind of a puzzle-solving platformer game, and it was so difficult, man, because there was like all this stuff that was just out to kill Spunky. Anyways, go ahead. I'm sorry.
let's see. So, the point being, so Nick, kind of in the trend, I want to say dating back to 2015. That's when they really get the ball rolling on like, hey, we have the splat. Let's bring back the shows in some way, shape, or form, like we did with Hey Arnold the Jungle movie, and like we're going to do with Invader Zim. So Rocko kind of fit its way into that niche. And they go to Joe Murray, and Joe Murray, he's had a pretty successful. It's kind of it's not like a big like whammo blammo career in animation, but the guy's still working. He's really kind of low key. I love Joe Murray's just a wonderful showrunner too. By the way, I love this man so much. He's awesome. Like he did Camp Lazlo, which again, I gotta tell you, I know you're not super lukewarm on Camp Lazlo, but I tell you,
Honestly, I never gave it a shot.
that's the thing, Tiki. It's really it's that Joe Murray humor, and I
I
don't
gotta
know
tell you,
that.
it was one of those things where I just didn't like the character designs.
I tell you, I mean, it's particularly Scoutmaster Lumpus and Slinkman. That's kind of I want to say they're both. I forget if they're both Tom Kenny or not, but the point being, it's kind of like it's a lot of fun just Tom Kenny having a blast, and Carlos Sales Rocky playing Laszlo, titular character. Anyway, what I'm getting at is he'd done that for Cartoon Network, I believe, and then of course at the time of I guess 2015 he was doing something with PBS, doing a show for them. So they come to him and they ask him, "Hey, you want to come back?" And he's a little hesitant. It's like, "Well, I mean, that's kind of out of left field, kind of out of the blue here. I never really thought about coming back." And he kind of like, "Only if I have something relevant to say. Like, you have a reason to go back to the well. I mean, I can't just come back like, hey, you want to make more Rocko?" Well, no, and you can see the DNA of that sentiment in the special.
Sure, sure.
So, anyways, the point being, he has a really. If I'm going to come back, I'm going to come back to the story. We're basically let's take let's update the setting there. Okay, well we have him in this perfect space where we left him off in the last episode. Where I can't remember if they absolutely knew that. I believe they knew that was the end. So I think it was somewhat of a we left him in space. That's where Rocko did end. So anyway, so basically, the modern cell of it all, and everybody returned, like all the cast returned. It was gonna be kind of like a great like venture, like let's recapture the spark and have like a new story, kind of like tether it all together, and everything kind of fell into place. It was finished and ready for a release in 2018, but I guess in figuring out the whole Netflix of it all, kind of delayed them a year, and that's what brings us to today.
All right, cool.
23 years to the day, mind you, the day that Rocko premiered, August 9th. 23 years later.
All right, so where do you want to start with the spoiler stuff, Dragon? I mean, do you want to just dive into the big spoilers? Do you want to build to them? What do you want to do here?
I figure we go kind of, again, just kind of touching chronologically a little bit there. See, I think everything's going to fall, the middle's going to fall into place rather quickly. So basically, let's get through like the setting of it all at the start there, then pretty much get into the meat of the spoilers, I guess.
All right, so of course we already had the big that big Comic-Con thing spoiled where they arrive back home, after the rocket, the rocket remote control is literally stuck to Hepper's butt.
Yeah,
For 20 years, the control to this rocket ship has been up your butt.
Yep. I tell you, it's I think on the whole with this, just with how we start things, just once we kind of fire back into things, I think there's even more fan service and references and just reverence to the material than there was in Hey Arnold the Jungle Movie. Do you agree with that sentiment? And there was a lot in Hey Arnold the Jungle Movie. This is like even
Hey Arnold, I feel like all of it was kind of reserved for the first act, and then we got into like the story, which of course isn't a bad thing because story should always come first. But Hey Arnold obviously had like a much more involved story to tell, and that very much had a deliberate thing that we needed to get across. This is very much more freewheeling and like we can do whatever the hell we want.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. I mean, there were so many deep cut Rocko references. I mean, from the very start of things, like they referenced, if not every episode, almost every episode. I mean, there was that. They got a lot in there. That's what kind of blew me. Like, being the Rocko fan, I recognized though. It's like Spunky with that little green. Remember when they're in zero gravity living room, where Spunky's like going after this green little moldy ball thing.
Yeah.
I want to say that's from the pilot. I want to say that's from or at least the first episode, the whole laundry day is a very dangerous day, where basically it's like it's either trash day or laundry. I think it was trash day, where trash day he basically is trying to throw away that little green ball and Spunky keeps going after it. It's a little weird mold ball or something. Anyway,
right.
On the whole, what I do want to mention, again, bringing up the Hey Arnold of it all, but I do want to mention, I think the animation style is more consistent here than it was with Hey Arnold. Not that Hey Arnold was bad with the animation style, it did capture the landmarks of Hey Arnold, but I feel this one felt like a more natural. This one pretty much like you locked back into what exactly Rocko looked like 20 years ago with this style.
I mean, would it be fair to say that Hey Arnold almost looked too good?
In a sense, yeah. In a sense, I'd agree. Yeah, and this had like here's the thing. You even look back at like something like Batman the Animated Series. You had that, and you had the revamp, right? And the revamp, they streamlined everything to make the animation easier. But of course, a big reason they did that, and again, making the animation easier, is that you kind of sand off like, oh my god, it's so remarkable. It's like we've imprinted something on cell animation history, where it's like, Clayface looks as good as he does because he doesn't look all that consistent, because the animation's always shifting and looking different. And again, Rocko kind of has that with the cartoony look, where maybe things aren't completely consistent or completely like kind of rounded and perfect. It's kind of the charm.
And it's interesting because I feel like the Jungle movie, what they lacked in the detail, they made up for in the lighting and the shading, and that's what I'm kind of talking about, where it looked a little bit too professional.
Yeah. Also, I mean, in places, I say this because it's like the only detail, like only nitpick I really have in the whole thing, if I'm being frank. Filbert's voice. So Doug Lawrence is the voice of Filbert, and basically has two modes for Filbert. As we mentioned earlier, they'll turn the page, wash your hand. Where basically you have like that, oh, fish sticks, I'm nauseous, that whole thing, where basically it's Filbert's kind of like the low-key neurotic versus like the kind of like the I'm trying to reach my subscribers right now, just when he gets really into that that high energy version of Filbert.
Yeah.
I feel it's a little bit more high energy. I don't know if that's a symptom of just just basically towards the latter seasons he got more comfortable with the character and just kind of did more of that. Maybe it's a thing of that. It's been a while, so that's the only thing kind of jumped out to me during that.
I mean, I will say, like, probably my main complaint with this thing is that Filbert and Heifer are very one note. It's like they're kind of just like one joke, and that joke is that they're embracing the modern life of it all, like the current day, whereas Rocko is not. And I mean, beyond that gag that they're into their cell phones and their modern technology, you really don't get much with their character.
You're right about that. And again, it's something that also, again, basically it feels like there's a trade-off with kind of like going back to the Nickelodeon well and these specials or these movies where you can only do so much within your runtime, and ideally you only have one shot at it, so you can only do so much. And we had that with the Hey Arnold supporting cast, where again we had all these characters who again like some of them were one note, like Harold, for example.
Most of them were one note, if I'm being honest.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. You're right that they all have like one gag, if not even that. And we had that. And we kind of like Heifer's a really wonderful character, and I'm not saying we need a major disservice. Like this is what Heifer and Filbert would be doing, but again, it's just kind of like we gave him one gag, and we gave Heifer has a wonderful, hilarious family dynamic, but of course we kind of only did that with Grandpa, who was a ghost. Logically, he'd be a ghost at the same
time. I did appreciate that, though. That did make a lot of sense.
Oh yeah. Let's see. Right. Okay. So and what gets us to the future, we're going to talk about this. So really, really big man. I mean, you're a fan of, I remember from the little that you do know about Rock. I mean, you're a big fan of really, really big man, aren't you?
Honestly, I'm even more of a fan of Powdered Toast Man. But yes, I do enjoy some really, really big man as well.
What's really, really big man is just the perfect stamp of like of where Rocko again could skew a little bit more like adult, but we can get away with it back in the 90s, where we just had gaze into my nipples of the future. And I love that as our premise. We're okay, so we checking where we left off the guys floating in space, and we get nippled to the future. Basically, he can do this to people, and they can have vision of the future, which basically is us, the audience, where we speed through time, and we see Rocko 20 years later. So then, of course, they go back to the roots of the show here. So they return to Earth, and I just kind of bullet point a few of the things we see here. Like we see Buzz Bucks, of course, your Starbucks film. We have like the kind of the new foods like pizza tacos, which is basically Rocko being at
that is very, very accurate, my friend. Especially someone who lives in a town that kind of prides itself as being a foodie town. That is like, oh, that was almost too accurate.
Again, this is the sell of the show, which pretty much they did kind of an extended opening of Rocko to kind of ease you back into, okay, here's the world of Rocko because you've been away for a while. Where okay, everyone else is having a great time, and everyone's just kind of succumbing to the trends, which is again is a Rocko to a T, where Rocko's having trouble keeping up with the times. There's always being kind of like the average Joe, but he's proverbially in our shoes, trying to catch up with the stuff that either evades our grasp or we're still trying to get used to, or it's like we're just kind of being trampled under the feet of all the people running from one place to another. It's kind of Rocko ad infinitum. There we have like Buzz Bucks. We got we have
really, really big man.
Yes. Okay. Now here's the thing. It's 3 R's. So I like to think it's a really, really, really big man. It's very much kind of the Snyder version of really, really, really big man. Beating up children, mind you. Remember, he's like holding this little kid like a paddle ball. He's beating them up in 3D. If it's not Zack Snyder, it's James Cameron's version of really, really, really big man. Of course, they have like the schlock, the schlock coma energy drink. Basically the like the energy drink that has mutagen in it that mutates everybody. Very horrifying. Anyway, so the point is we reestablish our status quo, including like the music cues and everything. So that's all really neat. So yeah, let's So I just want to lay out the story structure before we dive into like the nitty gritty. But it basically sets up our story here. So the real story now we've kind of gotten the setting out of the way here is that I love how the story goes in this thing where we have think about this, like everything is just so well. It's like a Rube Goldbergian story telling applied to this all here, where we have okay, so the tape is gone, the big the Fatheads tape is gone. It gets ate up. It's an orange tape, by the way. I hope you noticed that.
Yes, I did notice that, of course.
And Tiki, I swear to you, that is purely in there for the Nickelodeon fans. It's purely in there for if you.
I mean, honestly, this whole movie is made for 90s kids. Like, I really don't think kids today would appreciate this movie the same way that 90s kids would.
Like, they didn't need to put in that line. It's here's the thing. It just shows you it's for the fans. We have that line, of course. Guys, I don't think we're in the 90s anymore. Again, just putting it like that, just like right on Front Street. It's like, yeah, guys, we know who this is for. We're well aware. Anywho, the point being, I love this. All of this gets all of this gets set into place because the tape gets ate up as unfortunately VHS tapes. So basically, the last tie to the original Fatheads is gone. Which of course, upon their return trip after this big moment in the storytelling, again, that's going to set forward all the events as they then return home after that and scrambling for a remote or something. Which of course they find the return remote. They end up back, and of course they accidentally they kind of botch Ed Bighead's job in his home and everything with basically one little bowling ball, literally almost like Rube Goldberg in himself, like a bowling ball triggers all these events, like something falls and like the calculator gets smashed. And of course now basically it looks like the earnings reports are all wrong and the town hinges on Conglommo and everything's going up in flames. And of course, just kind of it all leads to kind of the father, kind of a story between fathers and sons, and all stemming from the Fatheads revival plot of it all. So it's all really interconnected. I really did like that.
And of course, the Fatheads is just a big old giant stand-in for the show itself. It's very much kind of like. Or even just let's say like 90s Nickelodeon in general, it's very much kind of like I love how this movie is a commentary on how we want these revivals so badly, but at the end of the day, sometimes these revivals are going to come out and they're not going to be exactly what we expect them to be, and they're going to include new characters, and it's and we just kind of have to just go with it. It's very much a commentary on nostalgia, of course. Of course, it's very much a play on that. But, more specifically, it is very much a meta commentary on the Nicktoon revivals. At least I think so.
Absolutely, no, you're absolutely right. It's a really strong parallel to kind of the nostalgic culture that we're living in now, especially what Nickelodeon's been doing. And of course, as you mentioned, I fully agree with you. It's an excellent point.
Okay.
So of course, let's talk about the big heads.
Oh man, I mean, this is I feel like it's a fair trade to have the big heads as the central focus over Hepper and Filbert, because they've already gotten a ton of focus in the show. We know pretty much all there is to know about these characters. And at the same point, the big heads, like, they got to mention that they just never got in the show in this movie, especially Ed Big Head.
You gotta remember, like, Filbert has, like, a wife and children, so we kind of played out that story as far as it goes.
Exactly.
Big heads, the big heads just gets like Dennis the Menace practically. It's just it's the built-in neighbor character. It's the Archie Bunker of Rocko's Modern Life.
I mean, this movie, it kind of reminds me of how they did the Mr. Pleakley arc in, the Principal Prickly. I'm mixing up Recess and Lilo and Stitch. It reminds me of how they did the Principal Prickly arc in Recess School's Out. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
kind of like took that standard Dennis the Menace story and really gave it some depth and emotion.
Yes. Oh my goodness, I love Principal Prickly, but yes, I hear your point. But
Dude, we need to do it. We need to do a podcast or something on Recess School's Out at some point. That's a seriously underrated movie.
It is. It really. Oh god, I could gush all day about James Woods in that movie. I could, but we don't have time for that right now. Yeah. So back to the big heads. Of course, Ed Big Head's always been probably my favorite character from Rock. I love the big heads together. I mean, Ed Big Head is also just as equally awesome as Ed Big Head is. There's just funny Charlie Adler doing a dual role, and he's just so freaking awesome in it. Again, just like, of course, I think one of the big landmark episodes of Rocko's Modern Life is the Magic Meatball episode, Tiki. Oh, the Magic Meatball, where basically he kind of goes up in his business by he can work his way up the business ladder by deferring all of his paperwork questions that are basically like yes or no questions.
Yeah. I know. I remember what you're. Yeah.
Magic Meatball's awesome. The point being, so I always thought it was ingenious how we paired Rocko with and Ed together here. Something we rarely did.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it was mostly just a Dennis the Menace type thing when we did pair them together.
Absolutely, and of course, like the only time I've ever really can recall them being legitimately paired together, like just the two of them for a stretch of story, was was the whole thing where basically Ed's like manipulating Rocko, and he just kind of tries to get a job at Conglomerate, and that's about it. Anyway, so the point being, we have the main thing I should showcase with the big heads here is that there are deep story roots in a really personal episode for Joe Murray in this with I Have No Son. That was a big episode. So that's the episode where we introduced Ralph Bighead. We introduced the fact that the big heads, they had a son and they were estranged, and basically through that episode, Ed and his son were kind of brought back together. There's ridiculous donut though, which is still pretty funny. Where basically they both had split apart a donut, and he basically rejected business, and they reunited. They both kept half of the donut. Hysterical. The point being, it paralleled. It was based on real life, where Joe Murray's father looked down on animation at the time, and of course, eventually, I want to say they reconnected. Optimistically, I'd like to think they reconnected. Point being, so this is kind of a reworking of that episode, which of course is kind of is recontextualized in a very interesting way.
Oh yeah. All right, so of course we have the the crux of at least the first act or the second act is finding Ralph Bighead, and we get kind of some cross country gags, a lot of cameos in there. We check in with the North Pole, which I was very happy about.
Oh yeah, of course, referencing the Rocko's Christmas episode.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Little thing too. Tiki, you've heard the rumors of why Rocko was canceled, right?
Oh, I mean, I am up on my cartoon conspiracies, but remind me.
The thing with the mop.
The mop. No.
Spunky and the mop.
No, I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with that.
I can't remember if it was in the last season or not. If it was, I want to say, I don't forget. It was like in with they usually pair them up. I don't know if it was the one where they go to space and the mop episode. But the point is, like, at some point in the series, and I don't know how much of a rumor that I think it's mostly a rumor, but the point being, it was always talked up that Rocko got canceled because they made one really edgy joke. And the edgy joke was basically Spunky fell in love with a mop, and there. And of course, we reference that here, where basically it goes on the internet like, "Oh, Spunky, don't go on the internet." The internet has like 10 hours of mops, and basically mops are looking at a perverted thing on the internet. Regardless, the idea being well, let's just say he got a little, like as dogs do, but with a mop, and you clean up things with a mop. So you can fill in the blanks.
Dear.
And Spunky's namesake. So the point being, people, I can't. The point is they brought up because again, it was like a thing on many people speculate about with Rocko, so they kind of brought that into the fray. Anyway, the point being, bring up all the modern things they can now play with, like the internet being at. Anyway, we travel not by map, Tiki. What do we travel by?
Oh God, what do we travel by? I forget.
Drone.
Oh right, of course.
Travel by delivery drone. Let's see. A few other things too. Of course, the reason we need to find the original creator. Of course, there's kind of a sentiment here that we need the original creator, and if not, we're going to have to defer to people who don't care about the source material, which would be the Chameleon brothers here, and basically using the 21st century methods that are animating it with worms on a computer. They have like the CG version of the computer generated version of the fatheads.
I got to tell you, Dragon, in my heart of hearts, I know this is probably not the case, but I kind of took it as a jab at the live-action Lion King.
Tiki, I love. Bear in mind, it would probably not the case because it was in advance before. It was they were working on this before the live-action Lion King, but fair point. Anyway, let's see. Oh yeah, okay. There's one. Okay, in addition to there's one thing I legitimately still don't like. I never liked it in Rocko, and they brought it back here, and I still don't like it. Mr. Ed Bighead's boss, Mr. DePet, I believe his name is. Point is the nose picking guy. That guy.
The booger guy.
Yeah, the booger guy, and that's a shtick. I mean, they made it a little bit more explicit here. Than basically you don't usually see the. I mean, I guess they should. The point being. He was always picking his nose, and that was his running gag. It was just it's like him thumbing his nose at corporate America, like the businessmen they're busy picking their nose all day, not really worrying about it. That's the gag, and I don't think we need to literalize her as just collecting the snot. It's just weird.
They're just like people like off to the side, just like collecting the jars of. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like I never liked that in Rocko, and I think they just went a little far off it here. And basically, it shouldn't be the last gag of the whole thing because it was the last joke of the whole thing. I felt that was off. Come on, don't end on that note. And of course, Nickelodeon does have a rich history of gross out gags, and I guess that's kind of what they're playing into. But come on, man, really, that's your last joke? Picking the nose. Anyway.
I mean, specifically this show, which is. I got to admit, kind of one of the reasons why, for me personally, it doesn't hold up. I don't know.
Right. Anyway, so let's talk about the big things. Of course, they find Ralph. Hilariously, they find Ralph in the in the desert selling. They have a wonderful statement on again, a little kind of a meta parallel here, where. We have a creator. Basically, they find Ralph Bighead. They love Ralph Bighead too. By the way, they got to know him. It's like, of course, there's the very famous thing where they make the Wacky Deli show, or I am the cheese. I am the best character in the show. That whole thing. The point being, we have like a whole episode about the animation within an animated show, which is pretty hysterical.
I really like the Mirage fake out gag that we get right before he appears.
Yes. It's a great build-up to him where we hear like the din 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 din, so you're kind of playing on the ice cream truck of it all. Just the Fatheads theme is really.
No, I'm not talking about the Mirage.
So when we check in with him, he's basically randomly in the desert selling fathead pops,
Just
popsicles.
conveniently, very conveniently.
I just love how impractical and just how ridiculous. That in itself sold me. So I love that just in itself. And of course, the parallel that we're going to have years later, they ask him to come back and like, hey, you got to make more fatheads. And basically, the creator of the beloved animated show, much like Joe Murray initially with this, says no. And he's selling the merchandise, and the idea is like he would talk well about the old. He'd be. I'm not saying that Joe Murray because he obviously don't see a whole lot of Rocko stuff. You see pops and stuff now and again, but like not the ice cream.
Yeah.
Like pop Funko Pops, but
yeah.
Point being, he kind of selling the merchandise, kind of reveling in the show, but not really doing anything new with it until he finds something personal to say. Which, of course, the idea with the fatheads, of course, is as you can probably put together, big heads, fat heads. They're based on his parents.
right.
And that's the idea. So of course, kind of similar to that. He's found something personal to say, and of course, it relates to saving. He's doing it for his parents to save their house, and of course, we have this wonderful flashback. By the way, it's just twisted enough, but it's sentimental as all get out. And I love the whole "you damaged my retina," where basically it's baby Ralph just bites Ed's eye, and it's creepy as all get out. By the same token, it's so sweet though. It's like you don't get the typical torture that Big Head goes through, but it's adorable though. It gets the horror Ralph Big Head. So horror it's what I love about Rocko many a time. You can be ridiculous, but you have that heart and sentimentality and some legitimate emotion there, which is nice. Anyway. So he finds something personal to say, which reignites a creative fire, and of course, going up against fans either applauding or raging outside. Because every time there's this reporter character named Nosy the reporter, and she basically pops in every time there's like a declarative statement that says the Fathead Show is on or the Fathead Show is off, and basically she just pops in. And she's like, "How does it feel to be responsible for the the destruction of O-Town?" Is basically putting all the blame
conveniently, every time there's a major plot point in this movie, it either saves O-Town or destroys O-Town.
Exactly, because the idea of Conglamo goes, the O-Town's in peril. But little fun fact: did you know Jill Talley, Tom Kenny's wife in real life, who's done many on Miss? He did Mr. Show with her. He's done all sorts of stuff with her. They're married in real life, so this reporter character is voiced by Jill Talley, therefore married to Tom Kenny. Little fun fact.
Nice. The more you know.
Dun, 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 dun. Okay, I think we've screwed around long enough. We should talk about the big thing with Ralph.
Yeah, so Ralph is now Rachel, and I love how we kind of foreshadow that in the little flashback we get of when he leaves. He says I need to find myself. I'm not happy with who I am. So that very much is set up. And Dragon, I gotta tell you, I was nervous. I won't lie. I was nervous about this when they went there. Not because I don't admire it, but because oftentimes when something like this comes about, it very much is to sort of earn political points, and I don't necessarily care about that. A big example of that, Dragon, is LeFou from the Beauty and the Beast remake. You know what I mean? That was clearly Disney trying to go for political points, and that really just did not pay off at all.
I can speak to this.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, this is kind of the opposite of LeFou, because it's not only do they address the issue, but they really get into the nitty-gritty of it, how it affects the parents, how it affects the family, how it positively affects the person. I mean, this very much is, it was bold, man. And I think they really played it about as well as they could have.
That's the thing. I've seen, for example, Supergirl season 4. They made a big deal out of. They introduced a trans character on that show, and again, that's the thing. It's points shows will many a time, no matter what you do, if you do something big, if you do something whether it be small or subtle or even or just kind of broad and big, there's always going to be people coming in, people saying there's an agenda or there's this or there's that, or points that you'll never win. Being the point. And I gotta tell you,
when you do something like this, there almost always is an agenda. But like I said, I think the important thing is the agenda to actually have something to say about what you're talking about, or is the agenda the Beauty and the Beast LeFou thing just to earn political brownie points? And exactly. I think when you're just trying to earn political brownie points, that's when you kind of veer to potentially troublesome territory.
And sometimes like a moment's a moment, it's like it's either there or just like under the radar, or it gets blown out of proportion. Boys, like there's a different case in every variety. What I'm getting at here is that, you know what's funny though, Tiki? Ordinarily, I would be very worried about that. Now, oh God, they might be trying to say something political. No, not Rocko. No, ordinarily. But again, I can't, Tiki. I can't explain when it happened. I was kind of in the character's shoes, like, huh. What about that? I wasn't really having. I don't know if I had like underlying faith in, like, hey, Joe Murray's not going to screw around with this. You know, it's like I just kind of took it as they did. We're okay. Well, we can move on then. I mean, I was little because I don't know. I wasn't nervous about it when I should have been. Ordinarily, I think I would be. And here's the thing.
Okay, I eased into it very quickly just because I saw the story potential it had with Ed Big Head, so I was willing to kind of go along with it.
Sure. I mean, you know, at the end of the day, what they did so well with this, and I mean, I think the reason I was just, maybe I just kind of like just went along with it, is that it really made sense for the Ralph Big Head character, in that Ralph, as you saw in that flashback, Tiki, Ralph constantly, he's always kind of frustrated with whatever he's doing. He's always trying to find himself in one way or another. So it kind of makes sense. It's like, huh, well, I guess it kind of works.
Mm-hmm.
And then it kind of, as it progresses, like, okay, well, it still makes sense, and she's just going with it. And he's just Rachel, as Ralph identifies, Rachel, goes to his father, and we just have this wonderful moment that just summarizes, okay, yeah, we've grown as a show, and again, it's kind of fitting in with it, but we're not telling the story again, but we're kind of saying something a little new about it here. We found a way to redo the I Have No Son episode, where again, it's like, my son rejected being a businessman, therefore I have no son. In this case, they've moved past that, so it's not the same argument, but it's something else, and he knows how to handle his father here, where basically, Ed's like says, no, and he just says, yes. It's like, love the yes.
That was great. I love how confident she is in that moment.
And Tiki, I think that's what separates it from being an agenda or being a product. Again, it's an agenda that services a story, because, as Joe Murray said, again, I think as you kind of read in the specials, that okay, it complements the themes of the whole thing about change. It does. It fits in there, and the whole change and the reluctance of change, and the whole the kind of taking, again, Ed Big Head's reaction is very much Ed Big Head's reaction, as well as Rocko's reaction to the show, is what the whole thing hinges upon. Again, there's a relation there, and again, so it's a relation that makes sense. So it's really,
what's great about Ed Big Head's reaction is that it's not the ideal reaction at all. Of course, it's kind of like the nightmare scenario for a lot of trans people, but it's understandable given the circumstances, and you don't feel like Ed Big Head is reacting in a malicious way towards this situation. He's more overwhelmed by it.
And again, we have our story basis covered too, so it's not out of nowhere. Again, we've set up, like, they've gone through these hurdles before, so it all feels very natural. And we have Monkey in the comments here. Monkey points out, and this is very true, points out that, of course, Joe Murray worked with GLAAD to make sure Rachel was done well. And he did do this, Tiki. He consulted them, made sure he didn't really step over his toes, didn't make like light of something that wasn't supposed to be made light of. The point is, it made sure he didn't go kind of like the more broad routes we've seen done in other things.
Sure.
Like, we don't do any obvious jokes. So basically, the main jokes that we kind of make about it here are like clever ones about like Roger that. I thought your name was Rachel. Like that's a clever joke. it's a cute little joke about that. The whole yes of it all, that whole gag. It's like, okay, we have it, and then we move on. We don't make any major we don't have like a Family Guy thing. It's like, we have to make a whole episode about it.
Jesus Christ! Oh, I
we
could
don't
just
do that.
imagine what Family Guy would do with this.
Family Guy
God.
constantly did, again, back when they were just like all the wheels were coming off and they were just skidding for a few years. The point being, you'd have like an angry mob scene. They constantly would have an angry mob scene where basically it would be like, we're all upset about this issue of the episode. And it's realize that it's like, okay, you're trying to say something, you have no idea what you're saying. Anyway.
Okay, Dragon, out of like sheer morbid curiosity, obviously they've done a lot of stuff with Stewie and LGBT, but did they ever explore that with Chris at all?
Tiki, you gotta remember, I try to avoid Family Guy like the plague these days.
I know.
I wouldn't be surprised if they. I mean,
I really wouldn't be surprised either.
Tiki, they've done relationship stuff with Chris, but I think I don't want to even They assume they've done everything under the sun at this point. Okay, let's just move on.
All right, fair enough.
Hey,
Fair
it just
enough.
just makes me sad. It makes me wistful for the days when Family Guy was an accurate reflection of Seth MacFarlane's talent, not what it is today. Anyway,
Do you
getting back.
think the reputation of Family Guy or the reputation of The Simpsons is more in the garbage?
Family Guy's Tegan. Why is there a question there? I mean, Family Guy's more in the garbage than
Well,
The
I'm
Simpsons.
just
I don't
saying, The
even.
Simpsons is a corpse, man. The Simpsons, like Family Guy is at least like there's at least something to talk about there. Just The Simpsons is just walking on fumes for decades now, literal decades, plural.
Let me put in perspective here. Here's an analogy we can all dance to. Okay, you have. Okay, if The Simpsons is a corpse, it's a well-preserved Norma Bates corpse.
Oh
Family
man.
Guy is again. I want to make a reference, but I want to. There's an image I don't want to spoil for you in something, so I can't go there. But let's just say it's like imagine there's the body of a loved one. It's like just in your face all the time. It's just you're staring right at it.
Oh Jesus
That's Family
Christ.
Guy, and it's on fire too, just for added effect.
All right, fair enough. I don't even remember how we got onto the subject.
Anyway, so getting back on point. So again, point is let's talk about like a scene where basically. So again, importantly, we set up Rocko and Ed Bighead have kind of a unified arc. It's all again the fatheads are kind of the unifying point, which of course involves the Ralph story. Now they're both kind of facing the kind of the winds of change, which is then literalized with the winds
That's a
of change.
hilarious gag.
Yes, it is.
That's probably the best bit of surrealist humor in this movie, I would say.
Oh yeah. Of course, basically it's kind of an epitomizer. Basically, their problems are very similar in that, Ed primarily in the first place. And of course, again, I love that we don't. Initially, I was unsure about how I felt about this. I felt about Rocco then kind of having the same lesson to learn after Ed. They're just kind of saying, like, I'm not happy with these big heads. But of course, if any character is going to be able to have this and have it kind of stick with that feeling off, it would be Rocco. So again, we link these two characters together. And importantly, it's when Rocco's kind of voicing what the fans have. So the points we're not making it a joke of like, okay, fans will have this. Points we're making a lesson, not a joke. Like, well, again, we've had the joke where okay, the fans are like mobbing outside of the building when things are going great and when things are not going great. And when Rocco's saying like, this isn't the fatheads I want. There's a baby fathead in the mix. This is not what I wanted. And he's then coming to realize, okay, I'm suffering through the same lesson that Ed has just learned. Only it's a much he had a much more a valid kind of thing, and I'm just kind of like he's kind of realizing how small things are. But again, I just love how casual is though. Okay, difference okay, I guess. I guess I guess change is okay. It's very simple. It's very mundane. Like okay.
The movie's message is honestly very, very refreshing and very. It speaks to me, man. I think it should speak to a lot of '90s kids. Is that
Yeah.
like don't live in the past, live in the present. Because we only live once, and if you're just focused on, you can have admiration for the past, but you can't just focus your life around the past.
Yeah, it's just so fitting that again, this is the lesson that Rocco taught Ed, and again, vice versa from the same person. Again, it doesn't feel like rushed in some way. I don't know. It feels all natural and good. Like I don't know.
Dragon, would you like to know some depressing news that kind of like takes us as a society back from that moral?
I think I'm gonna regret this, but sure, why not?
The Lion King is now officially the highest grossing animated film of all time, and it's only been out for a month.
You say that, but I'll remind you, it's not quote unquote animated.
Okay, well, whatever. I'm saying it is. Like, you're right. It's not quote unquote it. Whatever. It's the whole thing is fully animated. We know that the whole thing is fully animated. And so, like, I'm just saying, Dragon, that thing crushed Frozen like it was nothing.
So you're telling me that thing beat Frozen?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you're
Like,
right.
it was nothing. Like, with very little effort. Like, Frozen had to stay in theaters for months to make its record.
Well, now I'm sad. Thanks.
So
That.
I just think that we as a society should try and do better. It's like go out and seek movies like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and The Art of Self-Defense. Like original movies that really have something to say. Granted, for families, even for families, Dragon. I can safely say that Dora the Explorer, that Dora in the Lost City of Gold is very, very. It's so much better than The Lion King in pretty much every conceivable way. It's got so much more going on. It's actually self-aware about its silliness, and yeah. Anyways.
It'd be hysterical if Disney just cheaped out at the last second with The Lion King. Says, "Okay, we ran out of money. Just give them the others. Re-release the original and just use, just maybe reshade it a little bit and just call it the new one."
Dragon, that's pretty much what they did. It's pretty much what they did.
Okay, regardless. So back on Rocko. So,
freaking Seth Rogen and Billy Eichner are like the two like breaths of fresh air in that whole project.
Well, when you're talking about Pumbaa, maybe breath of fresh air is not the.
Yeah, well.
Anyway. Okay, I guess, so yeah, point being, the moral's really on point. The whole thing comes together. So final thoughts, Sticky. What do you got?
I mean, yeah, I really think that this is probably one of the strongest. I mean, honestly, I think the Dora movie is the strongest revival that Nickelodeon's done thus far. Dragon, I think the Dora movie might be even better than this.
You really
believe it or not?
Do you think Dora is better than Harold the Jungle movie? Really?
Yes. Oh, definitely, easily.
All right. Okay, I haven't seen it, so I don't know.
Dragon, I'm telling you, like, if you have any nostalgia at all for Dora the Explorer, just, by all means, go out and seek that movie out. Monkey also said they straight up re-released the original 2 years ago and only for 2 weeks just in AMC's and barely advertised it. I was fortunate enough to see The Lion King in IMAX in San Francisco, Dragon, so, that I do have a lot of reference for the original, but anyways, I digress. Like I said, Dora is very much kind of like the champion of these adaptations and revivals, if you will. But as far as capturing the spirit of the original show, I mean, obviously Dora does a lot to change the source material up. That's kind of what I expect about Dora. But if you're looking for something that's just like exactly like how the source material was to a T, you can't do better than this. Like, the Jungle movie was good. It captured the essence of Hey Arnold. It was a satisfying wrap up to the Hey Arnold story. But I think a lot of people can agree the Jungle movie probably could have been a little better. Maybe if they had a better animation style. Maybe if they would have distributed the screen time a little bit more. This, I feel like, the screen time, but I don't think it's as bad as the Jungle movie just because the cast of Rocko characters isn't nearly as large as the Hey Arnold cast. So by and large, you don't feel as ripped off with some of the fan favorite characters as you do a Jungle movie. And as we've been discussing, just the meta quality to the narrative and the the really rich story that we actually get out of a somewhat political topic without it feeling like it's political is very refreshing. Very, I feel like it was very tastefully done. Like I said, the meta quality to this movie is probably its biggest strength. Like I said, I'm not the biggest Rocko fan in the world, so I'm not over the moon about it. But it very much stands on its own. It's a good achievement. It's a good effort for sure.
Yeah, I'm very satisfied with this. It's a very fitting tribute. Again, it's not a missing piece film like Jungle movie, but it's a revisit that I feel gives maybe. I guess, I don't know if closure is the right word or not, because again, they were just kind of floating in space. We brought them back. I mean, again, I guess it's closure. It gives them the points. I guess I'll say, I'll go as far as it gives you closure. It gives you a little bit of revitalization at the same time, which you didn't really expect. But again, it was that good. It was that good. It was consistent with the humor. Everyone came back. It was, again, I don't think they could have, again, maybe a few less, booger jokes, but I mean, take that out of there. I don't think they could have done any better than what they did. It was just very solid. I mean, I had a great time with it. And you're right, Nickelodeon, they're kind of coming back on top this year. Let's see what happens next week with Invader Zim. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, right. It could be 3 for 3.
I guess I'm not an Invader Zim fan. We'll see what they do for the Everyman with that. But
Well, of course, Ezra is the big Invader Zim fan. Jacob is also a very big Invader Zim fan. So I think those two are they're more qualified to talk about it than we are, Dragon.
Very true. I mean, I've seen it. I just don't care for it, but we'll see what happens. I
I'm kind
respect.
of in the middle where I've seen it, I respect it, but I don't like go crazy for it the same way that those two and a lot of other fans do. So, anyways, all right. So, folks, like I said, obviously, stay tuned for the Invader Zim movie coming up next week. And also, we have our first of the 4 Nicktoons live action movie discussions. We have that recorded. I just don't think I'm going to upload it quite yet because we did do 2 double doses of Nickelodeon in a row. So I'm going to wait off a day or 2 to upload that while we do some other stuff, keep the content on the channel varied. But rest assured, our retrospective on Good Burger Dragon, is it safe to say it was a pretty fun conversation?
Yeah.
All right, so yeah, look for that in the next couple
One
days
could
or
say
two.
it was good.
Bloopity bloopity. All right, so yeah, look for that in the next couple days or so, folks. And until then, see you later. Have a good night.
That was a hoot.